Hey everybody, welcome back to Mr. Money Sense TV, the channel where we help you earn more, keep more, and grow more money. In this video, we're going to talk about a question that I get all the time, and that is, should I lease or buy a car? There's a lot of complexity around whether you should lease versus buy, and a lot of people just don't know what they should do. So in this video, we're going to clear things up and talk through some of the situations which would make sense to lease versus buy a car. Before we dive in, if you want more tips and tricks on how to build your wealth, make sure you subscribe to this channel, because on this channel we help go through a lot of tips and tricks on how to keep more, earn more, and grow more money. And so you can get a lot of valuable insights, and we want to make sure that if you subscribe that you're getting all the videos and all the tips and tricks to really boost your wealth. And also hit that like button if you found this information valuable today. So let's dive into whether you should buy or lease a car. First off, what is a lease? So a lease is kind of like just renting a car for a couple of years. So when you have a lease, instead of buying it, you don't actually own the car. You're just renting it from the dealership for usually 36 to 48 months. So within that time frame, you're allowed to drive it usually a set number of miles. So it's often either 10,000 miles per year or 15,000 miles per year that you're allowed to drive per year during that lease period. So instead of buying it, you don't actually get to keep the car. At the end of that 36 or 48 months, you have to go return that car to the dealership. So there's a lot of pros and cons with leasing versus buying. First pro is that leases have generally lower monthly payments because you're not paying principal and interest. Really what you're covering with that lease is the depreciation of the car, interest to the dealership, and basically the drop in car value over the time frame that you own it. The downside of a lease is you don't actually get the equity in the car. So if, for example, you get into a financial pinch, you can't turn around and sell your car to get that money or pay back that loan. A lease you are stuck with for the amount of time that you agree to, whether that's 36 or 48 months. So a lease, again, you're stuck with. So granted, you get the lower payments on the lease, but you're stuck with it. And if you think about it, when you have a lease, basically you're paying more than you otherwise would for buying that car on a kind of proportional basis, just because you're paying the depreciation of the car, the interest on the car, and the value of the car. And the downside is you don't get anything in return. So whereas if you own the car, you're paying for those things, but you're at least building up equity in the ownership of that car, whereas a lease you're not. You don't get anything in return. You have to return that car and you're left with nothing. So that's a downside of having a lease, is that it's just expensive compared to what you get, since you're not building up that equity in the car. There are some situations though where a lease might be a better option for you. One specific example is if you like to change cars regularly, whether you're thinking about it from an investment perspective or not. Some people just like cars and want to have a new ride every couple of years. There's nothing wrong with that. I mean, that's just a life choice. If that's something you want to do, there's nothing wrong with that. But if that is the way you want to go, the best route then is a lease, just because that way you can swap out the cars regularly. You don't have to worry about maintenance on the car because that's covered within a lease. You don't have to worry about reselling the car to swap into a new car, because then you may get lowballed and end up losing more money on the car that you owned. So a lease is generally the best way to go about it if you like to switch cars pretty frequently. So if you want a new car every 3 years, then a lease is probably the best option for you. Another good reason for lease is if you're one of those people that worries about car maintenance or thinking that they're not going to be going to the best mechanic or something like that. Well, like I just mentioned, maintenance is generally covered within leases. So you can generally take your car back to the dealership if there are any issues, and those are going to be covered within that lease agreement. So if you're someone that worries about different maintenance issues, then a lease could be a really good option. Another great reason to lease versus buy is if you own your own business. So if you own your own business, you can actually maximize your tax deductions by leasing instead of buying. So the IRS actually, when you lease a car, allows you to write off the depreciation and the financing costs of that lease. It allows you to write it off as an expense, which can lower your overall taxes. And so therefore, you're paying less taxes. You're actually getting more bang for your buck by leasing the car versus buying it. So if you own your own business, a lease can be a great option for you. Another final reason why you should consider leasing versus buying is if you just need the lower monthly cash flows. So as I went through, a lease generally has lower monthly payments that are required from a month-to-month basis. That's because you're not covering the cost of purchasing principal of the car. You're just covering basically the dealership's costs. So because you have a lower monthly cash flow need when you lease, then if you're in a situation, for example, say you're paying off student loan debt or something of that nature where you have a lot of your cash flow going elsewhere or need for that cash flow to go elsewhere, by having a lease versus owning a car, you could be saving yourself having those outgoing cash flows be higher, and therefore you could put more of your money toward paying off student loan debt or something of that nature, or just making ends meet if that's the case. If you just need that lower monthly cash flow, then a lease could be a great option. But be careful though, because you want to make sure you have stable monthly cash flows, because again, a lease is very hard to break and you don't have the asset to sell if you get in a financial pinch. So if you do go through that lease, you want to make sure that you can make those monthly cash flows for the duration of the lease. Even if it's lower cash flows, you still have to make it, or you could get into some serious financial trouble from just breaking a lease or having issues with that lease. For example, it's no different than having like any other loan or credit card, where if you're unable to make those monthly payments, then you could be getting your credit score dinged, and they could repossess your car, and a lot of other bad things can happen. So just if you do lease a car, make sure you can make those monthly payments for the duration. So you want to have that stable cash flow. So hopefully this video gave you some clarity on when you should lease versus when you should buy a car. And if you like this video, make sure you like it. In the comments below, tell me what car that you would love to lease right now. What's your dream car? I'd just love to hear it, just because I'm kind of a car guy myself, so I'd love to hear what your dream car is. So make sure you drop that in the comments, hit that like button, and we'll see you next time.